point with Dave Smith too much. But if people are replying to me, then I'm going to reply back. So.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we are live on Periscope, live on Facebook. Great. Come on, YouTube, get your act together. There we go. Live on YouTube.
Whew. Tucker Carlson and the Feminization of America. My friend Matthew knows how to make a title. I'll say that much. Hell yeah.
This is gonna be quite an episode. This will be fun.
You know, of everything, you know, we make a lot of jokes here. First joke is that we'll ever get to 1,000 subscribers, but like after that joke, it's, you know, we have like a thing. I'm just like, okay, we're gonna get to 1,000 subscribers or get punted from YouTube first, and you know, really for all the talk about Boater Squad and any of the other things that like anyone would say is just a bunch of wackadoo shit. Really, you know, if you do the right dance, you're not gonna be in any trouble. This topic right here, this is sort of the quickest path to getting punted from pretty much anything. Anything that's not Gab.
I have a feeling that this, or at least the intent with this episode, is to accelerate both of our goals. It's to accelerate both of our. I guess they're not even goals necessarily. They're like inevitabilities. Like it's an inevitability that we're going to either get kicked off of YouTube or get to 1,000 subscribers. Like one of those is going to happen. So this is, I think what we're doing today is probably going to accelerate both of those eventualities. But hey, more power to us.
Right. I mean, we could just be like regular people and just kind of accelerate one of those things.
Well, what fun would that be?
Right.
What's up, Magoo? Magoo was in my my conversation with I keep calling him, I know his name is Jim McGill, but his name on YouTube is Magoo, so I just keep calling him
It's
Magoo,
hard
so.
when,
Shout out Magoo. I hope he doesn't mind having his real name read out on the air. Oh well. At least we aren't at 1,000 subscribers yet. So I noticed that he was in my conversation today with Jason Stapleton on Wealth, Power, and Influence, where Jason and I kind of had it out on this subject because Jason and I don't see eye to eye on the takes that I'm going to have today. But fortunately, Jason and I have a good enough relationship that we can have it out on air, and then I can go talk about it on my own, and he doesn't give a shit. So
now, may I ask a question?
Ask.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was still muted from the train. Shout out to the train. Because I was just a little behind the scenes action. Matthew asked, you know, what I was up to. And I said, obviously, I was just walking around. I was gallivanting, actually, around my downtown, photographing custom handbags. Like, what else am I going to be doing, Matthew? It's not 3:30 yet. And he's like, well, that's fitting. I want to talk about gender roles today. And I was just curious with that. Where does someone from sort of the pinnacle of masculinity, the world of force reconnaissance, come down on gender roles? I'm just curious.
Let's just say he has a very libertarian. You got me, yeah. You got me eating some of these.
I didn't mean to.
They're vegan Japanese noodles, and I realized they were vegan as I was opening the package, so I was disappointed. So I just went and carved off some chicken and tossed it in there. But anyways.
I was going to say, because it might change your take on this very topic. You don't want it.
Yeah, I can't get too much soy. So I got to have my soy to animal protein balanced out. Jason's the former Force Recon guy has a very libertarian take on gender roles. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
He's very live and let live. He doesn't really have a strong position on it, except that the strength of his position is that he doesn't have a strong position. So he's kind of like, you know, do whatever you want, do what makes you happy. And that's fine. I don't expect everybody to agree with me.
Matthew is not for everyone being happy. That's one thing I know about Matthew.
That's right. That's right. I'm a Carlian, of course. So I'm by the way, I'm working through the general intro to unqualified reservations, and I'm on like chapter 8 or chapter 9, and I am stunned at the sheer depth and breadth of the mind of Curtis Yarvin. It's just
Yeah.
his ability to understand complex systems and then just explain them in the most passe way ever. Where it's kind of like there's this super complex, complicated topic, and it's like, okay, so we need to sit down. We could have an entire college course just on understanding this. And he'll describe it like with a perfect analogy in the course of 5 minutes. And it's just so incisive. It's like, and as soon as you hear him explain it, suddenly it just makes perfect. You can't not see the world that way. It's just like this is the way the world is. He just described it absolutely perfectly. So that's this is just another unsponsored shout out to Unqualified Reservations. Go read it. You will. I'm not going to say that you won't regret it, because like what he said is he said that the title is actually a bit of a lie. There is no such thing as a gentle introduction to UR. He said it's kind of like a mild DMT trip. If it was mild, then it wasn't DMT.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing the audio version because you mentioned that you were taking a look at it again. And like part 1 is like 5.5 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It's a lot of words. So that's funny. He's incredibly wordy,
but
it's because he covers so much ground.
Right.
He covers just like the most massive subjects in a single blog post. Now the blog post is 25,000 words or something. I have no idea. I don't know how to estimate those things. But the blog post is incredibly long, but it's because he's covered so much ground over the course of it.
Yeah, and I think, because like even just reading or listening to him sometimes, he kind of he meanders a little bit, and he kind of like he'll just start tagging his own jokes with like additional punchlines, and you're just like, okay, all right, can we get back to the thing? But I think if he didn't do that, I don't know, it would be exhausting. I don't know. I think it's actually kind of necessary that he does that. And then because I'll always be looking for a quote to put up if I'm sharing something of his, and it's always this earth-shattering quote that's right after one of those little breaks where he just explores the comparative device. Because that's where a lot of his strength is in the comparative devices that he uses.
Yes.
But he'll pursue that metaphor or whatever analogy he's making, just like 1,000 miles, in that direction, and to the point where he's like, okay, all right, yep, that's funny, okay, and then right after that he just smacks you with this just kind of amazing, concise take on something, like
a one-liner that just defines an entire swath of human history perfectly. One of them, the recent one that I read here, it said that let me see, I actually might be able to find it because I'm in the same piece. He said,
I gotta say, that guy's pretty based also.
Oh,
I mean, that guy's
yes,
like sneaky based.
If you dig into some of his less well-known stuff, you'll realize just how like a lot of his stuff he kind of neuters just a little bit, and every once in a while he pulls back the curtain and you see just how
so yeah, I see where we're coming from.
Yep. I can't find the exact part here. The way he framed it is he said that progressivism or universalism, which is his name for basically like Americanism, like the ideology that reigns supreme in America, but like the Davos America, the UN America, the one that everyone aspires to be, the one that the cathedral identity he calls universalism. And he said, I just saw this just a minute ago, and I was trying to kill some time to see if I could find it again. But anyways, he said that the perspective, the progressive perspective on America is that it conquered the world in self-defense.
Progressive perspective on
conquered the world in self-defense. Like that, that just conquered the world in self-defense. Like 7 words. There's so much packed into those 7 words that tells you the mentality of the person who populates the public consciousness of America right now.
Yeah.
That relates to something that I wanted to talk about a little later in the show. Something that
Mm-hmm.
I tweeted recently on this other story. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, let me give you a really good example of what you're talking about with like the comparative devices. I think this is what
Yeah.
you're. When I read this, let me know if this is exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
So he said,
Welcome to the show, folks.
"Oh yeah,
Welcome to
yeah.
King
Well,
Pill.
welcome to King Pilled. We're only 10 minutes in.
Yeah. If
This
you
is
don't like that we didn't introduce the show yet, Matthew wants you to unsubscribe right now and
yes.
tell anyone that you shared the show with that they can fuck off too.
Unsubscribe, walk to your mirror, look at yourself, and tell yourself that you hate yourself 10 times in a row if you
Because
don't
here
like
we're
the
trying to see
cold
if we can
open.
get either to 1,000 subscribers, get kicked off YouTube, or work our way exactly down to 0 again. And I mean fucking 0.
We want to offend every single person who's watching. We're going to find your sacred cow and we're going to offend it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess we're not going to offend your cow. We're going to kill your cow. We're going to kill your sacred cow. That's our goal. So, my name is, if you haven't watched this before, my name is Matt Erickson. You can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. That over there is Stephen Messina. You can follow him on Twitter at Messina Inc. And this show, like I said, this show is going to be kind of spicy. But I think that you'll probably, with this subject, we're going to cover a lot of ground that really gets at the heart of our ethos here at King Pilled and the type of message that we're trying to spread. So do us a favor and like this stream and then share it and subscribe to our channel. And then eventually at some point in the future, when you're listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher, whatever podcatcher you use, then subscribe to us there and then go out and share it. But only share it with someone who you think will like the message. Don't share it with someone who you think will disagree with it, because I'm not out here to change hearts and minds. My goal is just to talk about the stuff that I care about with other people who care about it too. And so that's our animating ethos here. Anyways, back to Yarvin. So the way he approaches with the gentle intro, he explains the nature of Americanism through the context of explaining the other two predominant ideologies of the 20th century. So he breaks the 20th century down as basically kind of a war between three different ideologies. One is fascism, as expressed primarily through the Nazis, and one is communism, as expressed primarily through the Soviet Union. And then the third is what he calls universalism, which is the American popular culture, essentially, that's been crafted and cultivated over the last. Really, he ties a line from all the way back to the founding of the country. But then, especially over the last several years, several decades, the narrative has been really getting clamped down, and they're really becoming clear about who they are and what their goals are. So, in order to understand universalism, because universalism is the water that we swim in, it's kind of like our default settings. If you've grown up, been born and raised in America over the last several decades, it's very difficult to explain it. I use this analogy in almost every episode, but it's the fish who swims up to the other fish and says, "Boy, the water's warm today," and the fish says, "What's water?" That's us to what he calls universalism. So to explain it is kind of hard, because it's hard to see the difference between it and not it. So you have to kind of try to drive a wedge in there to get people to understand, to expand their perspective and understand other aspects of the world. So basically, his view is that the relationship between communism and fascism, and then liberalism or universalism coming over the top, there's like a biological inevitability to it. It's just a natural outwork. If you zoom out far enough, you can see the way different groups of people will interplay with one another, and different psychological impulses in people will lead to the formation of different movements that then react and then counter-react to each other. And the people who have the wealth, the power, and influence, shout out the other podcast, they
Shout
are the
out.
ones who are able to game the system, and they're able to actually manipulate the different players. So you have the people who are involved in the system, who are the true believers, who genuinely believe in the goals of the stated goals of fascism or stated goals of communism. They're the religious adherents to those belief systems, and they get weaponized and played by the ruling aristocracy that plays them off of each other for the sake of the ruling class's own gain. And ultimately, it's basically just a game of power. They're in the business of using these other people who are striving for power against each other to try to protect and consolidate their own power. At the very top, people aren't ideologues at the top. The people who are the real movers and shakers are they're just in the business of power. And they're the ones who are dictating the nature of the game, which means whether we like it or not, the rest of us are all playing a game of power. So you can either just opt out completely, accept what you have in front of you, and never strive for more, and just try to protect yourself from the system, or you can get involved in the system. But if you're going to get involved in the system, you got to understand the rules. You got to understand how it's being played. You got to understand that you're not acting on a blank slate. You're jumping into a game that's already going. So you need to understand the rules of the game around you so that you can act accordingly, so you can try to get the consequences that you want. So that's the basis of the show here. So anyways, within that context, he's used different terms instead of fascism and communism, and he's used different terms to try to take some of the emotional loading out of the conversation. And so he's described the democratic bloc and the revolutionary bloc. These are two major segments of global power, of geopolitics. And the revolutionary bloc would be like the Soviet Union, and the democratic bloc would be like the UN, kind of, essentially. And the UN being just kind of an expression of American power, a system by which America rules the world while pretending that they don't rule the world. And so he just describes this dynamic perfectly. The way that that the revolution, the communists. I'll just use the actual words. The communists are incorrigible, irrational, deranged lunatics, and the universalists, the Americanists, are they're sold out and dedicated to this belief of national security and American supremacy and all that. But it's not fashionable to be that way, so they have to pretend that they aren't. They have to pretend that they're just in the business of ensuring good global governance. But ensuring good global governance is just a euphemism for ruling the world. So the Americanist rules the world while pretending not to. And I'll go into that idea a little bit more later on in the show here. But the Americanist then uses the communists to achieve their agenda. You notice that everyone basically is aware that growing up, we have it entirely beaten into us that fascism is evil, that is the greatest of all evils, and that it was murderous and genocidal, and it cannot be allowed to persist even the slightest bit. But with communism, it's kind of like, well, they were well-intentioned, but they just kind of messed up and committed a little genocide on the side.
See, it's great in theory, but in
right.
reality,
right,
human beings are not evolved enough yet for it. I mean, I remember that from elementary school.
Exactly. Yeah. It's communism is too good for us. That's their position. Communism is too good for us.
For a lot of it. Yeah.
Like
it wasn't even like it was a Catholic school that I went to, and even them,
Yep.
I think it was a lay person who took that position, but still.
But the layperson was platformed to teach that, and nobody had a problem with it because that is the popular ethos. That's what everyone is conditioned to believe, that we're not good enough for communism. Communism is too good for us mortal wretches. We have to be
human
perfected
nature
before.
Communism.
Right, exactly. We have to be perfected to actually attain that. So really, what you realize is that universalism or Americanism is just the prelogue. Or the prologue to it's the precursor to communism. We need to get ourselves in the position for communism before communism can happen. So you radicals, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but you need to back down. You genocided too many people. That's dirty. That's messy. You're making us have to clean up your mess, and we don't want to do that. We would rather focus on our goals of dominating the world, but doing it in a very peaceful. We're going to dominate the world peacefully. That's our goal. So Yarvin then takes those two dynamics and he compares them to each other. This is what he said. The relationship between the Democratic bloc and the Revolutionary bloc is like the relationship between an Appalachian father, Bobby Ray, and his teenage son, Dwight. Dwight is a hard case, no doubt about it. Bobby Ray does not condone his activities in the slightest. In fact, the two are even found screaming at each other and a few times have come to blows. Sometimes they don't talk for months, and Bobby Ray once hit Dwight so hard with an axe handle, he broke the axe handle. Like, he's painting this, like everyone knows this story. They're like, you can visualize this exact relationship. This Appalachian father with his son who he doesn't get along with. They fight like cats and dogs, and they've even gotten like physically into fights with each other. But back to Yarvin, Bobby Ray and Dwight are family. If the revenuers come, Bobby Ray and Dwight will be standing together. It is true that Dwight Dunn shot that man down in Campbell County, but Bobby Ray obviously is not concerned in that. And besides, he deserved it. This like that that 1-2 paragraphs, just I can feel that description in my bones. I 100% understand exactly the dynamic he's describing, and that is the exact dynamic that exists between the United States and the Soviet Union throughout all the Cold War. That was the dynamic. It was estranged family members who are just working through some issues before they come back together. And if they get pushed up, if one of them gets pushed up against the wall, the other one is going to be there to step in and defend him and protect him. So if you get your fascist reactionaries rising up, everything is dropped and immediately the universalists and the communists are right back together again, fighting this evil tyranny that is upon us. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like public service announcement for anyone out there, if you see like a man and a woman, presumably husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, arguing, doesn't matter how bad the argument is, whatever's happening, it's getting physical. You should think twice and 3 times before you go in there and try to save the day in any capacity, because 99 times out of 100, both of them will just start fucking you up.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
people are generally defined by their opposition. You know what I mean? If you put people, you kind of, that's a fun like little intersectionality experiment. Just kind of carefully designing rooms and kind of seeing how people sort of divide in some sort of friendly competition, friendly game or whatever. You'll see dynamics happen where, if it's just a room of like guys and girls, it kind of turns into a battle of the sexes kind of a thing, or, whatever. But, pick any little breakdown of intersectionality you want. Not like any kind of like life or death, scenario, but just the way that people just like bullshit around and interact with each other.
Like will always attract like. People are attracted to their own kind, whatever that means, whether that's tall people or short people or fat people or smart people or dumb people, or you can keep on going down. I'm not going to keep going down the list because we haven't gotten 1,000 yet, so I don't want to push us over the edge just yet. But
well, you're trying today, man, with this title and this topic.
Yeah,
I mean, this really is the one. Like I'm saying, this is the one that'll do it if one's going to do it.
This is my goal. My goal with this is kind of to be like, we live in this dystopian occupied land, and we're just, we're the plebs who are sitting in our bombed out former hotel that we've built a little lean-to, and we're kind of having a conversation here, and I want to get the spotlights, like the helicopters that are circling over this dystopian wasteland, and they're trying to spotlight anybody who's acting up. I want to get the spotlight's attention. I want them to look over at us, but I want to, as soon as they look at us, no, sorry, no, we're being good, no, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't have said that. Yep, all right, okay, all right, back as you were, we're good. That's kind of my goal with this episode. So.
We'll see.
So that was just fantastic. You say that I'm the segue guy, but man, look at that. Yeah. You just gave us a great little segue. So
here we are. So
for anybody who hasn't listened to my conversation with Jason Stapleton this morning on Wealth, Power, and Influence, I would, unless you're watching live, if you're watching this after the fact, then just pause this and go listen to that conversation and then come back. Because
if you pause it right now, you better fucking unsubscribe. Even think about pausing this now.
See, I don't even have to do it anymore. Now you just do it for me. I started it, and then
bad cop.
It's all good. Yeah. But so he and I, Jason's position basically was that this Tucker Carlson thing is, well, I'm going to assume that people who are listening to our show are already political enthusiasts. So if you need me to explain the whole dynamic of what happened with Tucker Carlson, then maybe this isn't the show for you. I don't need to break down everything that happened. I didn't see it. You didn't see the Tucker Carlson thing? Off the show. Done.
Should I go? All right. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'll explain it just briefly. It was basically Tucker Carlson did a bit where he was going after Biden, basically, because Biden did this press conference where he had Kamala Harris and a couple of female generals standing there, and he's like, I want kids to know that this is what a vice president and a military general looks like. And then in his thing, he talked about like how much they were prioritizing maternity flight suits so that they can accommodate pregnant women in the military.
I have cringe goose. I don't know like what the autofocus is gonna like.
Oh, it focused. That was good.
Oh, gross. Really?
It was brutal. So Tucker Carlson, of course, was like, "Oh, this is fantastic for ratings." So he went after him, and he was like, China is focused on. There's a story recently about China is trying to hyper masculinize their military. He's like, China is trying to make their military more masculine, and America is trying to make their military more feminine. And we're worrying about like making sure that women are comfortable in the military. And as Jason pointed out, nobody's comfortable in the military. You're not supposed to be comfortable in the military. It's not supposed to be comfortable or accepting for anyone. It's the military. And he did it in his very Force Recon way. But so he said that he said that Tucker Carlson stepped in it because he took the wrong position. That his goal in what he said should have been going after the very idea that you would enlist people in the military who are going to not be combat ready by definition. That women, if you're in the military, if you're a woman in the military, you just should not be allowed to get pregnant. If you get pregnant, then you get discharged. Like that's just, you just can't voluntarily put yourself in a non-combat ready position if you're going to be in the military, because the military is first and foremost supposed to be a combat unit. Now, I don't think that the military is first and foremost supposed to be a combat unit. That's ostensibly what it's supposed to be, but that's actually not what it is now. And there's plenty of arguments to be had about, well, combat now doesn't mean actually going out. A lot of it is remote through drones and whatever else. I'm not really interested in that conversation. That's not my goal to get into that today. Where I really kind of lit the fuse was I said one thing on wealth, power, and influence that we're trying to do going forward is we're basically trying to be more offensive. We want to hurt people's feelings more often. And not in so many words, but basically we're not going to be PC anymore. So I was like, well, ooh, I've got a great chance here to hurt some people's feelings. So I said that I would go even further than to say that women can't be pregnant women in the military.
Oh no.
Is
okay. Hit me with it. I'm ready. No, did you? Yeah,
so
tell me.
So I said that a society that has women clamoring to be in the military is a fundamentally flawed society. That if you have women wanting to fight, wanting to go out and fight, something broke in your society. Because so now a lot of people took that as me saying that women aren't good enough for the military. And I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying the military isn't good enough for women. That it's after we finished the conversation, I went down and I was talking to my wife, my lovely wife, and her mother, and we were having this conversation, and they were just right on board with me. That if you let me put it this way. This is what I said to them. I said that there are a lot of women in their 20s and 30s who adopt the position of, I want to have a career and then I want to have children. Dude, and or even I don't want to have children. Lots of them say I don't want to have children. I'm totally comfortable with that and it's empowering to me and whatever else. What you very rarely see are women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are happy that they don't have children. It's very uncommon. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. As I said multiple times in the show this morning, the exceptions prove the rule. The fact that there are exceptions proves the rule. So my position was, if I was running the society, if I was just the dictator ruling it from the top, yeah, I would say that our military is men only. I would have no problem with that. I will only accept men in my military. If you're a woman and you want to join the military of dictator Matt, you can go move to a different region that employs women in their military. I think that having women in the military is a degradation of women, because the role of nurturing, of creating a human being and then nurturing it and raising it and teaching it is the highest goal a human being could be called to. And it just so happens that women in general are much better at that than men. Men are very good at protecting and providing. Women are very good at indoctrinating. Women are very good at nurturing and indoctrinating. And there are exceptions where there are worlds that there are countries where women are you have women in the militaries. You have the Amazonians and you have different African tribes and you have there was Vikings with warrior women, and there is such a thing as warrior women. That happens. But that concept exists because it's an exception. There, you wouldn't know all the stories of all the warrior women throughout time if it was a normal thing. It's not a normal thing. They're the exceptions. So in a society, you're probably going to have people who are exceptions, but they need to be treated like exceptions, not the rule. And right now, what we have is a society that is not just saying that women should join the military if they want to. They're saying that it's good and it's empowering and it's something to strive for. And not only should they join the military, but the military should be adjusted to make it even better for them. But like by what standard? Basically to make it easier for them. And that to me is evidence of a fundamentally broken society. Because you're not saying there's people the people who are arguing against this are doing a what do you call it, like a Mott and a Bailey argument, where they're saying, well, if women want to join the military, they should be able to. And I'm saying women shouldn't want to. If they do, maybe there's the exception that does. But that indicates to me that there's a problem upstream where women are being encouraged to a lower calling, to a calling that's not as elevated and noble. They're being encouraged to go to basically go roll around in the mud. Like rolling around in the mud is what men do. Men go roll around in the mud and fight and do shit like that. Women are too good for that. That's not like, if you have the odd woman that wants to, well, okay, fine. But what?
Is this thing on still? Hey.
Yeah,
okay.
you're still there. You're still there.
Cool.
What did you?
No,
someone say
not
something?
Just me. I'm not the one I'm worried about here.
Yeah, I'm not worried about anybody.
Yeah. Okay. I have attached myself to your wagon through harassing text messages some months ago, and here we are. I am. I'll be
never thought you'd get into this, did you?
Yeah, no, just someone was like, yeah, this is going to be the best last episode ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
No, well, sure. It just like many things. I think I heard Jordan Peterson when they were talking about abortion, and he basically said we're having the conversation just completely at the wrong level. You know what I mean? We're trying to have this conversation here, but like you said, it needs to be like way upstream.
Yes,
that's probably that's probably valid. Yeah, I mean, I do know some freak women who would be very just inclined to sort of just kill things and be like really good at it. But yeah, like you say, it's definitely the exception. It seems at the very least it should be a meritocracy,
right?
If the purpose for the military is like what you would think it, but like kind of how you're saying it's like the purpose of the military these days isn't what one would think that the purpose of the military might be, and
even beyond that, this Mott and Bailey argument people are doing is they're saying, well, some women are even better than men. Okay. So then why is the military lowering the standards?
Right.
Because that's right. Like, if you're saying women are just as good and should be able to do it just as much as men, well, now you're saying that because women want to pursue their fulfillment, we need to make the military worse. We need to lower the standards for people to get into the military. That's the position. So is the argument that women are just as good as men? Or is the argument that women should be able to pursue what makes them happy, even if it means a worse military? Like,
or society.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Now we're...
No, I mean, isn't that that's not me. That's what you were saying, right?
But yeah, that's exactly the position. Because what you have here is everyone just looks at this as the individual woman and what happens to her and what makes her happy and what she wants to do. Mm-hmm. What they don't look at is the opportunity cost. Mm-hmm. Because a woman who goes and joins the military is a woman who is not procreating and crafting the next generation. That means she's saying the other women can take care of the future generations of humanity. I'm going to go do this. So she's not contributing her influence to making a healthy, stable future generation. And if she's going to be pushing a man out of the way, and the man is going to go, so basically my position with this was that we have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of evidence that men and women generally lump themselves into two distinct categories. There's some trailers in the middle, but by and large, there's a distribution to majority of men on one side, majority of women on the other side. This idea of having women not only being permitted to join the military, but being encouraged to try to and to try to make it very normal and make it accepted and try to get more women to join the military. This is very, very unusual relative to all of human history. That's why you can name all of the exceptions. You don't name all of the societies that didn't have that, because there'd be too many of them to name. It would take you too long. What this indicates is an evolutionary reality. Now, it's possible that evolutionary reality changes, but then you need to give me a justification for why it's going to change. What's adaptive about shifting in that way, in a way that hasn't evolved for the last however many tens of thousands of years? If you're saying that a human species that encourages women into fighting roles is a more adaptive, more thriving species, then what's the evidence for that? If you gave me sufficient evidence to persuade me, then I'd be persuaded. But I don't see any of that. I just see, well, women should be able to do what they want. But since when is our argument about stuff, it's best if people can just do what they want? Since when does that, that's not an argument. That's just a statement. There's no justification there. There's copious amounts of literature that demonstrate that happiness is something that you find when you stop pursuing it. When you focus on something else, then your happiness shows up. But if your decision maker is, I'm just going to do whatever makes me happy, I'm going to pursue my happiness and try to make myself happy, very often you don't find it, because happiness isn't something you can pursue. You pursue meaning, and you pursue what you're biologically adapted to do, and the happiness naturally follows. And there's hormonal evidence for this. It's like when you do certain things, it programs your hormones, which programs your mind and programs your biology. Like, all of this stuff is just, this is the thing that I like to try to look at human beings as animals. Try to just depersonalize it. Don't get into all of the shoulds necessarily. Just look at what is. What do humans do? And the overwhelming majority of humans throughout all of human history have split into this dichotomy where the men protect and provide, and the women care and nurture and teach the future generations. And the men are just providing the support for them to do that. So the most important thing is what the women are doing. The women are teaching and programming the future generation. The men are creating a safe environment for them to do that. That's what humans, based on all of evolutionary evidence, that's what humans are most adapted to. There are exceptions sometimes, but those exceptions, number one, they haven't survived. They haven't persisted through to now. You know, the Amazonians don't exist anymore. And like a lot of those, if this was like a normal adaptive trait, it would be spreading in a way that was as it spread, the people were getting happier and happier, and the countries were getting more and more successful and prosperous. But that's not happening. The countries where this is being prioritized, like Jason, he mentioned like Israel. He mentioned there's a couple other countries where that happens, but like those are countries where women are required to serve. Those aren't countries where women are volunteering. They're required to serve for 2 years, and then they can go on with their life. So I'm not going to say that it's the end of the world. I'm not going to say that the single reason why the American empire falls is because women are in the military. I'm saying that having a whole bunch of women who want to go out and fight is indicative of a deeper problem, because for whatever reason, they don't find nurturing and programming the future generation fulfilling. And that's what women have biologically adapted to do. So if you don't find it fulfilling, why is that? What has changed to make it so that you don't want to do that? That's what I want to understand, because there's abundant evolutionary evidence that that's what you would be naturally inclined to. And it just so happens that there's also a huge track record of women who went throughout their 20s and 30s saying, oh, I'm the exception. I'm not the one that does that. And then they hit their 40s and they're like, oh, wait a second, I'm not the exception. Now I want to have kids. And they change their so obviously this isn't a dynamic where women just pursuing their happiness and whatever feels good right now always works out well for them. In fact, it often doesn't. So then if we're teaching young girls as they come up who are impressionable, if we're teaching them this is something that's just as fulfilling and just as great for you as anyone else, and you should be inclined to do this, we're potentially misleading them into ways that will harm them. Because as Jason Stopper, great guy, we're going to have him as a guest on the show at some point in the future. He texted me after this, and we were talking back and forth. And one thing that he pointed out is that the military knows this dynamic, that women who have gone through stressful schools, so for instance, like Rangers, Special Forces, they have a tendency, because of that intense stress sterilizes them. The same thing happens to men, but when men leave the stressful situation, they're more likely to recover their procreative ability. For women, their reproductive organs shut down and they don't get it back. They stay out. And he gave me an article here from Business Insider that says military women are 3 times more likely to suffer infertility than civilians, but the Pentagon is forcing nearly all of them to pay for their own treatment. So in a survey of nearly 800 women, many respondents say their infertility is linked to known causes of reproductive harm, but the military and veteran healthcare systems are not providing access to a full range of infertility treatment. This means that there's not like no cost. And I'm sure there's plenty of women who have done it and they're like, oh, it sterilized me, but oh well. But like, is this statistic being told to women who are wanting to enlist now? Like, if you said the price of enlisting is not just you can't get pregnant while you're in the military, but in fact, you'll never get pregnant again. You're trading your ability to get pregnant and to procreate for the opportunity to serve in the military for a few years. Is that a trade-off that women want to make? And if that's a trade-off that women are making, is that something that you can build a healthy society upon? I mean, it is the super stressful ones. It's just the combat roles. But again, we're dealing with a continuum here. So it's not like, oh, well, the combat roles do this, but then all the other ones are, everything's just fine and just different. Like it's, now you're saying, well, women should be able to get into the support roles in the military. And like, it's kind of like, why is this being pushed? Why is this being forced? And why can't we have a conversation about the pros and cons? Why are we only allowed to have a conversation about the pros? Now, obviously we know that. It's obvious why that is, because this is a specific agenda. But then why is this a specific agenda? And that's where you get into the conversations that you really can't have. Right. Do you have anything else you want to say on it?
Oof. I don't know, man. You did a number. Is the conversation? I mean, it's really it kind of goes back to Gramsci a little bit, right?
Yep.
At least a little bit. I mean, you're kind of you're undermining the idea of the family. And I've been, just as you're talking, I'm thinking very much in the way of just like where we are versus sort of where we need to be having the conversation, or like how we got to where we are. Because I mean, I know any number of I know a certain amount of women certainly who had kids and absolutely shouldn't have.
Yep.
They just have like a real resentment for their children to the point where it is real scary, real scary. And so now, why that might be, I suppose you could, I don't know, if you start pulling up those roots, you might be there for a while. And I also know a good amount of, men and women who are sort of looking at not having children as like a badge of honor, because the world's so overpopulated and just contributing to global warming and carbon emissions and everything else. And so, that's also a little bit by design, as well. I remember being in elementary school, having people come in and talking to us about how the carrying capacity for the world was reached and breached a long time ago, and it's just any new birth is just putting more of a strain on Mother Earth, and she can't handle all of us, and we're terrible.
For which there's no evidence, by the way. There's no
here,
evidence
yeah,
that that's the case.
here we are. We're all grown up, and now everyone's happy that they don't have kids. And so, I just think there's so many factors that go, further back than like our childhoods, much further back than that, that put us to the point that we're at where we're at. And in terms of dealing from where we're at kind of a situation, I think it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to look at men and women in terms of. I'm sorry, doing a Peterson thing. If you look at the bell curve action,
Yep.
where they're a little bit offset, and so just on this end of things, you've got your your psychopaths in the most complimentary way possible. Any of the characteristics that would make like an ideal soldier, right? And then there's some women who have those attributes also, and so I think pretty much everyone that is talking in the comments agrees that it's supposed to be a meritocracy, and if there's a woman out there who would make a good soldier, and whatever happened previously, societally or just in her family or her own personal life that led her to be there, she wants to be a soldier, then okay, go bananas. No one, I don't think outside of Matt's dictatorship, no one is saying that she should be able to be a soldier. But also they were hurting for numbers for a while, weren't they?
Yep.
So so if that was obviously that was like a way to get numbers and relaxing the requirements and making it sort of a political thing also. But yeah, in terms of just like ideal scenario, then yeah, of course it should be an absolute meritocracy. And I understand what you're saying about if you were taking a look at society and you saw a society where most women found it fulfilling to raise children and do woman things, I believe was what Matthew called them, was woman things. Female things, actually. Didn't you say female?
Yeah.
I think you said female
things.
Yeah, female things, right? That would indicate a healthy society. I don't think I disagree with that.
Because the flip side of this as well is not just women in the military, it's women who are in the military who have there's a whole bunch of different things here. Women who are in the military who have children or have had children, they're by definition they're going to have a much less active role in raising their children, which means someone else is raising them, which means someone else is teaching them, someone else is spending time with them, someone else is seeing their first steps, someone else is hearing their first words, someone else is doing all of that. It also means that given the nature, to make the libertarian pragmatic argument, given the nature of our society, those institutions are always going to be socialized institutions. So if your goal is to have a limited government, for whatever quixotic reason you want to pursue that, you're not going to get that by encouraging women really to go into the workforce, period. Because as soon as you start splitting up the child care responsibilities, now it's very difficult to juggle back and forth, to have one parent take care of them, then the other one take care of them, the other one I'm learning that right now. That's very difficult. It cuts down your productivity. It cuts down everything for both of you. It's much easier if one parent is primarily responsible for the caring, and then the other one is there in a support way. But so the flip side of what you're getting here is the fewer women who are raising their children, the more men are doing that job, and men aren't nearly as good at it as women are. Men don't have the nurture capacity that women do. So if men are going into the business of primarily child rearing, then these children are not being raised as effectively as they could be. The children aren't getting the best possible parenting experience that they could, because now you're just kind of ad hocing something together and just like, whatever, just throw some adults at them and just kind of like give them a little bit of beef and see how it works. It's like there's no coherent strategy to child rearing. And this is just natural cause and effect. If you raise shitty kids, then you're going to get shitty adults. And if you get shitty adults, then you're going to get a shitty world. Like, these just are naturally downstream from each other. So what's ironic is with the title of today's show, I said Tucker Carlson and the feminization of America. What's ironic is that America isn't suffering from too much feminism. Or from too much femininity. It's suffering from too little, because women aren't taking as active a role in the nurture and the care for their children. That's being offloaded to either to men or to daycares or whatever else. So children are growing up without the active feminine connection that they require, that they need. So they're turning into a society that doesn't know how to behave, that doesn't know how to act, that's racked with mental illness. And it started with getting less feminine impact on the children. So the irony is that it's the feminization of America is what we need. We need America to be feminized. We need women who are much more active in raising their children. And I can't even get on board with the idea that we should not have children. Number one, there's nothing biological about that impulse. Like what animal do you know of that actively is sterilizing itself? Like, you're biologically wired, your DNA exists to propagate itself. That's what you're wired for. You're wired to be fruitful and multiply. So the idea that for the good of the earth, we need to not have children. So our bloodline needs to end, and the earth will persist, and I'll die, and I'll never have children and grandchildren, and the human race will dry. So this entire notion is like the most antisocial idea imaginable, that people shouldn't be having children at all, that the world is the idea that the world is overcrowded. Like, you can fit the entire Earth's population in like a like multiple square mile cube, and you could like water the entire Earth's population with like just the Mississippi River or something like that. Like, resources are not a problem. It's the efficient application of them that's the problem. And that comes down to an inefficiently programmed societies that have all the wrong priorities, that aren't maximizing their own efficiency, that aren't maximizing the optimization of their children. And yeah, I mean, what the world needs, if there's a crisis of overcrowding or whatever, we need technology. We need technology to facilitate this process. And to get technology, we need more minds on the job. The more minds on the job, the more innovation can happen, especially if you can optimize those minds and have the best minds working on it. And they can optimize, and they can solve some of these problems. But really, humans, like animals that overpopulate, are self-terminated. The system terminates them. So it's possible that this is a natural mind virus that's coming up to neuter the human population, in the same way that, like, if you get too many wolves in a given area, then they'll eat all the elk, and then the elk won't graze in specific areas, and so floods, floods don't happen as much, and because the earth is held, you get this chain of effects, and eventually it leads to, wolves start starving to death because they can't get enough food, or something like that. Like, those sorts of natural things will happen to ensure that there's an equilibrium maintained. So perhaps this impulse, this progressive impulse, is a natural mind virus that is creating an equilibrium, and maybe we should be encouraging it. Like, one of the commenters here was saying, the Popular Liberty, he says that basically we should be encouraging white liberal women to get into the military. We should be encouraging them to sterilize themselves for the good of the rest of us. And I mean, if they want to, maybe we shouldn't be stopping them. Let them do it, and just batten down the hatches and ride it out. And because I mean, the people who prioritize reproducing are the people who are going to rule the future by definition. So this is like willing surrender by these people. They're just like, not enough people should we have too many people on the earth, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take ourselves out. You guys take care of the earth. Okay, great, perfect. You guys genocide yourselves, manage that on your own, and we'll go on with our lives. But then we're the ones who are going to live, and our generations are the ones that are going to live on the earth. So we'll take control of it. We'll dictate what happens with the land and with everything else. So if you maybe there's like a policy where if you decide that you don't want to have children, then you don't get to own property. You have to sell your property to someone else because you're not gonna have it anymore.
I got a text message from Matthew. It's kind of weird. It says, "Man, and who let these bitches vote? Am I right? Was I not supposed to read that online or on the internet? I don't mean.
Yeah, man. You can't just read everything I send you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes.
I do believe that women shouldn't vote. But it's because I don't believe anybody should vote. So that would include women.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, this is an interesting point. Popular Liberty says raising children is the evolutionary role of grandparents, not parents. That's actually there's a lot of viability to that. This is an interesting concept. The nuclear family. There's people who oppose the nuclear family and they talk past each other because many people who are down on the nuclear family are down on it because they say that you should have a networked extended family. So just trying to restrict everything to just father, mother, and children is not it's not adaptive. It's humans haven't evolved that way. Humans have evolved to have big networked extended families where everyone comes together and the whole family works as a network to raise the kids together. And then obviously there's a limit in scale to what you can do with that. You can't do that you can't have 200 people all raising their kids together. It just doesn't really work out. But so that's Thaddeus Russell's position. Thaddeus Russell's position is he opposes the nuclear family because he thinks that it's too exclusionary and that it creates an unstable foundation for the children. And I'm sympathetic to that argument. I'm willing to hear counter arguments, but I'm sympathetic to that. And
I tell you, I'm very sympathetic to that argument.
Yeah, but then there's other people who oppose the nuclear family because they say that it's the super progressive argument that that having a father and a mother together is white supremacy or whatever. They have some inane argument, but
Right.
But what ends up happening is those people end up talking past each other. Thaddeus Russell, whenever he has this conversation with someone thinks that he's holding this other position, that he's saying that it's oppressive to have a single mother and father and whatever else.
To be fair, he's kind of oozing in this sort of like left coast commie professor kind of snarky pedantic thing.
Yeah.
So you just
he brings it on himself.
I mean,
I'm sure he would recognize that himself. I'm sure he would admit that. He has Berkeley all over him
if he wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's covered in Berkeley. Berkeley just oozes out of him.
Yeah, I like how people have like Trump derangement syndrome. I've got it for those people. Like, and so I have to actively. I have to just sort of try to filter all that out when I'm listening to him talk because, he really could be saying anything, and just my impulse is just like, what the fuck are you talking about? But oftentimes he's saying things that I completely agree with.
And then you're like, so you start off
the packaging though.
You start off like he starts talking, you're like, no.
Yes.
And then he starts talking, and then you're like, okay, all right.
Yes.
Fine.
It's the same thing as Orange Man Bad, and I know it's a shortcoming, but that is my Orange Man Bad is like that accent or that like affect or whatever. I don't know. I guess from being like around academics and stuff like that. But yeah, oof.
Oh man.
If I heard him talk about how, if I heard him say the word nuclear family or whatever, I would nuclear. Fuck. I hate when I do that.
Nuclear. It has to be nuclear.
Nuclear. Right.
I just did it wrong.
Yeah. Nuclear.
Just totally off topic. For you football fans out there, Jonnu Smith is signing with the Patriots. That is my dynasty football shares are very happy about that. That's for another podcast. Let me pull up this other thing that was related. Let me very awkwardly segue to this new subject. Before I do that, Scott Adams I'm just going to copy and paste this anytime someone tries. So if someone eventually comes and tries to cancel us for this episode, this is going to be my response. He said, I haven't yet been canceled, but I know it's coming. So I wrote my public apology statement in advance. Feel free to borrow it. And if you've ever read one of these statements from these guys that like the Bachelor guy who recently is like he like groveled on the ground for saying something that they said was racist. And it was because it was some chick that a couple years ago was like at a plantation party or something like that. And there was people there with blackface. And he said that that she shouldn't be like, we shouldn't just assume that she's a racist and just dehumanize her. You know, we should at least listen to her side of the story. And he just got completely shat all over and canceled. And he came out groveling, saying that he's so sorry for discounting other people's lived experience, and that he's now working with a race sensitivity trainer and stuff like that. So if you've ever heard somebody give one of these really groveling apologies to the Lynch cancel mobs, the Lynch cancel mobs, then you'll recognize the tone here. So it says, I'm a deeply flawed human. Really just a pile of organic crap that's barely sentient. I must learn to listen and do better. I am committed to doing the hard works of examining all of my flaws, as described by my critics, and I will force myself to be unhappy until my brain is free of all bias and I can clearly see myself as broken and unworthy of life itself. I beg my critics, who are already operating at a higher level of moral standards, to pity me for my wretchedness and evil, and to help me improve by spitting on me in public whenever they see me. I'm committed to a path of self-improvement that will, with lots of hard work, make me barely acceptable to proper-thinking people. I dedicate my entire life to the mission of pleasing my critics, who are justifiably uncomfortable with my very existence. In summary, I am a shitty person, and I will spend my days thinking of nothing else but my unworthiness, which I now understand extends to the molecular level of my being. Please adjust your opinion of me to be as low as my opinion of myself. I plan to issue public statements of apology for being me until the end of my days, which I think we all agree should come sooner than later. So that's my response to anybody who has a problem with this episode.
So doesn't seem like the commenters do.
Well, that's good. That means that we're doing our job. That means we've got the right people. We've pushed away all of the wrong people, and we've got all the right people here.
Did you see that Meghan Markle allegedly is talking about a presidential run?
I really wish I would have gotten this on the record and said this before, because I was thinking this, and now obviously everyone's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, sure you were." But like when I was listening to, I was like, "What's the point of this conversation? What's the goal of her going and doing this thing with, like, why is Oprah agreeing to do this with her? There's got to be an ulterior motive. They're setting up for something. What is it?" And I was like, would they do that? Would they run Meghan Markle? So then I was like, well, why would she have become the Duchess in the first place? Why would she, of all, like, obviously she and Harry didn't fall in love and decide to get married. Like, obviously that was an arranged marriage. They were put together. It was match made. And so why? Like, what was the reasoning for that? What are they pushing toward? And like, has this whole thing just been orchestrated from the beginning? Was their goal, like, we're conditioning this woman to be that we're going to get her a bit role, so she's kind of a celebrity, but people don't really know who she is, so she doesn't really have anything on the record, so she can just be whoever she wants to be, and we can mold her into whatever fits the circumstance. And, she's hot, she's not like completely not white, so we know that people fundamentally are just racist, and they're not really going to respect someone who's not complete. Who's like, even Obama, he's still pretty light skinned, so although those super racist progressives are willing to accept him. So that's where Meghan Markle is. She kind of falls into that middle range. So she just is like a poster child for them to craft, to build a celebrity now. Now they don't need a politician. Those days are long gone. Right. Now they need to craft a new superstar reality TV show style person. And she just fits everything just about perfectly. And then she also has this cross transatlantic dynamic now where she married the prince, and so they're royalty, so it gets the royal family involved, and just all this stuff. The whole thing just works together too perfectly. I think that there's a lot of truth to this.
And so all they have to do is just change the law, right?
Yeah.
Because like she was born in Kenya, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
See ya.
We're gonna be the Meghan Markle birthers. That's how we get this channel deleted.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Toodles, folks. Okay, so I love this. We've got two women in the comments here. We have my wife, and then shout out to Emma Denson. She says that she's the Duchess of my country here in England. So
I was just gonna say that Emma Denson. That sounds so British.
That's the most British woman's name I've ever heard.
Okay.
Yeah. That's fantastic, and she's been just right on board. I tip of the hat to you, Emma. I think it's fantastic that you're digging this message today. Okay, so this was the next thing I wanted to. This addresses some of the stuff that we were already talking about. So this tweet's going around yesterday. It hasn't gone uber viral, but it's gone viral-ish. This woman, Brenda Moss, her bio on Twitter says she is a mom, an activist, an Everytown Survivor Network fellow, and which is Everytown for Gun Safety, a movement of Americans working together to end gun violence and build safer communities. She's an Everytown Survivor Network fellow. So basically, she's just a member of a Democratic political action committee, basically. She's a life coach, a motivational speaker, and a writer.
She sounds great.
Very necessary, she says. Oh. Ironically, she's from Lynchburg, Virginia, and ironically, given what we're about to talk about. So she tweeted at DoorDash, "I didn't know carrying a loaded gun and a magazine was a requirement to deliver food. Yes, your driver showed up at my door just like that. I am a survivor of gun violence. Is this your policy? Hashtag forever Sean," that makes me want, she says she's a survivor of gun violence, which when I hear that, I think someone shot her or shot at her. But then she says hashtag forever Sean. So that makes me wonder, is it like her son died? So she's not actually a survivor of gun violence.
Yeah, what a
she knows someone who is.
Fucking son died. Sorry.
So this just like the sheer gall of this woman. So what I said, I quote tweeted it and I said, "There's a strategic brilliance to weaponizing victimhood like this evil bitch is doing here. She gets all the benefits of having power and also all the benefits of not having power at the same time. In other words, she's wielding power with no accountability. Sheer evil." That's
how they do.
It's the most like privileged position you could ever occupy. Like, and her replies were just fantastic. Like someone said, the people were saying, well, like he's got to protect himself. Like, do you have any understanding of how dangerous delivery driving can be, especially in frickin' Virginia? And she said, "What, pray tell, is the driver protecting themselves from?" was one of her replies. And who orders food thinking they're going to make wads of cash from the delivery guy? That's some messed up thinking. Guy needs a new gig. It's messed up to think that he may face violence while he's trying to deliver her fucking food to her. That's his problem, in her opinion. It's your problem if delivering my food to me means you might get robbed at gunpoint. You shouldn't feel the need to protect yourself if you're going to deliver food. If you think that that's the case, you just need to get another job, sonny. Like, how does this possibly compute? These people's minds are full of maggots. They are rotting potato mash.
Oh, and maggots.
It is.
Oh, we're really going for it today. Jesus.
But this. I can't remember exactly how I was going to connect this back to what we were saying earlier. But there was something that.
I think it was what you were talking about. That was the Moldbug quote, right? You know, one by playing one via self-defense, or
it was. Oh yeah, what was the Moldbug?
Is it not the idea of having all the benefit of being the victim?
Yes,
but you know. Right.
This typifies America, because this is exactly how America has become a global empire. They have framed themselves as the victims in every single circumstance they've ever found themselves. And in spite of all of that, it's like they just, sorry guys, we had to conquer the whole world, or you guys just wouldn't leave us alone and you forced us to do it. Really, it's your fault. It's your fault that we had to conquer you. If you would have just left us alone, we wouldn't have had to conquer you. And there's a specific there's a framework for this. This is a specific anthropological adaptation that makes an ideology basically unstoppable, because they've mastered the ability of painting themselves and public opinion as victims while dominating and shitting all over everybody. So they're benefiting from being able to dominate and shit all over everybody, and they're also benefiting from people thinking they're the ones being dominated and shit all over. They're getting the best of both worlds, and they're outsourcing the consequences for everything that happens, everything that they do.
I can't help but think of a certain let's say, Revolutionary War that may have may have been the start of that
Yes.
that that whole thought process.
Yep. This is if you read the gentle intro by Moldbug, the one I'm going through right now. This is where he really lays that out. If you don't want to spend, I don't know, 10 hours or something listening to or reading the whole thing, then just go. I'll put in the show notes on YouTube. I'll put the link to a video you just absolutely must watch. Shout out our buddy Anamnesis. You've heard us talk about him before. He's done a series on Moldbug, and the most recent video is just absolutely the best. Where it's called it's Meditations on Moldbug, Mystery Cult of Power, and he details the exact psychology of basically the radical left that has, and the way that it's worked since back in the what do you call it, the back in the English in the English government, back prior to even back in, I don't know, starting in the 1600s or something like that. That there's a specific psychology.
Emma, she would know.
Yeah, Emma would
when?
know.
Tell us. Fuck.
There's a specific psychological profile of people who, as he starts describing them, the way that they were like insane rabble rousers in the House of Commons, who nobody liked them. They would never accept yes for an answer. They would always raise hell and piss everyone off and get in fist fights in the middle of Parliament. And Parliament was the word I was looking for. They were just complete animals, basically, just chaos mavens. And what they wound up doing is completely taking over Parliament because they played the long game. And they were willing to just rampage people, and like they would take advantage of every single little bit of tradition or idiosyncrasy in the law, or they took every opportunity to win because they were in an all-out game for power. And what was interesting is they were the super lefty types in Parliament, but whenever there was so the moderately lefty types hated them, and like they would fight like cats and dogs. But if there was ever something that the right-wing side wanted to get done, the two would just naturally pull together into a coalition and steamroll the right-wing, the Tories, and then get right back to what they're right back at each other's throats again. There's just this natural symbiosis between the two of them. And that's the exact dynamic as what I was reading earlier between the revolutionaries and the counter-revolution, or the revolutionary societies and the democratic societies. So the Americanists, democratic societies' relationship to the Soviet revolutionary type. The communists and the progressives always, ostensibly they're opposed to each other, but whenever the chips are down, then they've got each other's backs and they're looking out for each other. And basically it's like a parent. Moldbug makes this analogy that it's like a parent with a teenager that's just kind of rebellious and just shit stirring. And the way that every time they misbehave, you give them a reward to be, oh, I'm so sorry that you have such a rough life that compelled you to do that. Let me make your life better for you. Which is like the surest way to create the worst type of person. But this is the dynamic that exists between America, broadly speaking, and any sort of regime to their left. Oh yeah, and that lady with the DoorDash thing, she later explained in a tweet that it was a no contact delivery. So if she saw the gun, it's because she went outside before so she specifically requested no contact, and then complained that the guy had a gun while he was not contacting her. And not only that, she knew he had a magazine as well. At least she said that he did, which makes me think she had a conversation with him. She asked him. So clearly she didn't feel threatened by him. She just knew it was a good opportunity to have to take a political stand in a way that's going to benefit her tribe at the expense of the opponent tribe.
I don't get the idea just from hearing about her. She's a mother and an activist and a survivor of blasey blasey. I don't get the idea that she would look for a situation that she could turn to her benefit politically. I don't get that.
Can't buy that.
No, that doesn't seem right to me. So I don't know, guys.
You know that every single person who's an activist is just completely magnanimous and honest, and they just want a better world.
Calling balls and strikes. That's what they do.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to get into today, how much time? Okay, about an hour and 15 minutes. I wanted to reply to a couple more comments. So on Thursday, we replied to some comments from a couple people on our some of our last episodes, and I wanted to reply to some of the replies that we got, and then I also wanted to respond to something that someone said on the video for my appearance on Counterflow with Buck Johnson, which we got just a fantastic response from. People really, really enjoyed that, which I think is great. It's really good to hear that people dig this message. So let's see, which one do I want to do first? Okay, I'm going to do the ones on our last video first. So the first one, I'll respond to this guy, Model Mark, again. And he was the one who we primarily had responded to last time, and he had some other thoughts here. So the first thing that he said was, I'm not going to read the whole thing here. He disagrees with our position on principles. He said there's a reason also why people learn by principles. You can find out by presenting someone with an inconsistency and watch them find their way out. They feel they need to be consistent. Almost everyone does. I've not yet met a person to who you present, here you say humans should obey, and there you say humans should be obeyed, to have them shrug their shoulders and leave it there. They feel the need to give a consistent principle that explains their behavior, even if it makes no sense. I'm not saying that principles don't exist. I'm saying in politics they don't matter. They only matter retroactively, and they only matter if you have the power to enforce them. If you don't have the power to enforce them, and your principle is it's wrong to take power and enforce it, then your principle is just a decoration. It's just a signaling device that does nothing for you. And in fact, strategically, you don't seem to care very much about your principles because you don't want them to last. You don't want them to spread. Because by definition, you're taking a strategy that will ensure their destruction. So who cares more about your principles? The people who want to see them survive, or the people who just want to talk about them to feel good? That's kind of the big difference between us, between like the more neo-reactionary direction or whatever, post-libertarian, and libertarians. Libertarians want to talk about their principles and wear them as decorations and feel good about them, but they don't actually want to see a world where those principles are broadly accepted. They just want to talk about it because it gives them status within their circles.
Yeah, that is what. If we had changed what libertarians were after, we would just be in a better world. But what they are after, I've definitely decided is that kind of feeling of moral superiority, like from sort of an outcast perspective, like where they're in like a tiny group of people who are and they kind of like fight in there, but just being able to just the idea of being able to say, oh, I'm outside of all this. I'm exalted from all of your nonsense. That's what the payoff is. So like if progressives are motivated by like actual power that does stuff, libertarians are motivated by status that does nothing.
In a sense, libertarians are motivated by self-identifying as victims. Like they wouldn't have an identity if it wasn't, I'm the minority who's smarter than everyone else and nobody else agrees with me. Like, and this is like documented that libertarians are naturally contrarian people. Like they don't know how to function when they're not contrarians. So this whole victimization ideology where like people identifying as victims, that's libertarianism is just the same way. They want to be a victim of the system because they wouldn't have an identity otherwise.
And I think that is that I need to be behind the eight ball at all times kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Where so like you get like progressives who it's really funny because what libertarians should do is just trick themselves into thinking they're losing all the time anyway, but without actually losing all the time. Because that's what progressives do. And you know that reminded me of like everything you were saying, where you have all of the benefits of being viewed as a victim, but really you're not, and you know you're a lot. And boy, well we're going for it in this episode anyway. You know I feel like a lot of the people that were protesting with like BLM, you know what I mean, and it's just like, you know, I'm sure you're fooling a lot of white people, other white people, but like, listen, it's just I don't like you can sort of size people up, you know what I mean, it's just. I know I understand that a lot of the people that I was seeing like in the protests, I would say probably had two parents. I would probably say that there was a decent car or two in the mix, looked like, you know. just by knowing people, being a sentient human being, and kind of being able to kind of assess people, right? And it just, these people are what do you mean these people? Just kidding. But a lot of people who are protesting with BLM, black, white, whatever. By the way, it's just like, you're a member of the upper crust of society, or will be. You know what I mean? And it's just like, you're doing this thing where you're poor, quote unquote, for like a brief period of time, which is better known as broke, right? Because rich people can be broke.
Yep.
But you know that in a few years that you're gonna have money. You're gonna have money and status, right? And you are taking very politically advantageous positions, but while also scratching the itch of, I don't know, whatever fucking terrible white liberal professor, told you that you needed to have more of a struggle. You're scratching that itch. Not everybody, but I mean, there's 5 or 6 that I happened across, that certainly would have, and maybe even more than that, maybe 7, maybe hundreds, maybe a lot of them, that tick that box, right? And so it's just a beautiful, if you just step back and look at it as like an engineering marvel. I mean, I remember when I was in the middle of my summer mental breakdown with all this, I was just begging for a blue pill. I mean, it was just, I would have just downed the bottle. I don't remember like the characters from Matrix that people told me that I was being, but the guy that sold everybody out, it's like, hell yeah, that's me. That is me all day. And a steak. I remember the steak was part of his deal. But you get to wake up in the morning, right? And you get to do nothing. It costs you nothing. You get to yell at people for like not wanting masks. You get to call everybody racist. You just kind of outwardly just spit venom on people. You feel better. Your positions cost you nothing. You get to feel like a rebel. Yet, every mass media outlet, all your friends, anybody who has any status, Costco, Walmart, JP Morgan, like literally everybody, they all tend to agree with you. And you can just say, yeah, fuck JP Morgan Chase too. And JP Morgan, yep, fuck us. Yep, absolutely. It just must be exhilarating to have those non-opinions and just go through life. It's just the dopamine just must be fucking flowing, just like some sort of like weird, fucked up Orwellian like bukkake just happening all around you.
That's fantastic.
And I want that kind of just for a week, just see how it feels, and then I can decide if I'm gonna stick with that.
Orwellian bukkake.
Fucking amazing. But like libertarians could do that too. But I think that's why, libertarians are just like, all right, we're going to find a tiny caucus in a tiny party, and we're going to fight to take that, and we're going to fight to take that. They need to actually feel that real like resistance, and feel the losing, and feel the impossibility in the struggle. But you could just say it's a struggle. I don't know. Do what they do. No?
What these people have is no meaning in their life. They recognize implicitly that they are extremely privileged, that they are on the upper crust of society. That they're on the upper crust of society, that they have, by all accounts, from the outside, they should have extremely abundant, happy, fulfilled lives. And they feel hollow and empty inside. They hate themselves. They detest themselves because they have no identity or movement to attach themselves to that gives them meaning. So they had to create one. And they had to create one that told them that they're oppressed, that they're downtrodden. And that's why they feel empty and hollow inside. So this is a product of extreme privilege. They're so privileged that they don't have they have no hardship. They have to craft their own hardship to explain why they feel so empty and why they hate themselves, why they aren't going anywhere. They could have some kids and settle down and work the land, or do whatever else, do whatever every single human being for the entire history of fucking mankind has done, and found fulfillment and meaning and purpose in procreation and cultivating the future generation. That's what every human being has ever found purpose and meaning in doing stuff that matters, taking on responsibility and doing something that matters. That's where you'll find meaning. But they've been conditioned to believe that that's oppressive and that won't give them meaning. So the people who took their meaning away from them told them that having meaning is bad. The things that give you meaning, they took it from them and said, these things are bad. You don't get these. You don't get to have the meaning and purpose that humans are wired to have. You get to create your own. You get to craft your own identity. You get to discover your own meaning. And the dirty secret is that they'll never find it. They'll never get it. They get to act like they're pursuing it, but they're going to detonate. They're going to explode. And the matter is, will the rest of us put ourselves in a position where we can survive when they explode? John, I don't know if you didn't hear, but we just talked about the DoorDash lady.
Yeah. He said that he missed most of it, but then I saw him comment, "Hey, that's just like the DoorDash lady."
Yeah. Model Marcus, he's watching live. The guy whose comments we're replying to, he said maybe some are, but I don't care about them. I think he means by some, I think he means that the people there, maybe some people are not interested in principles and he doesn't care about them. If you don't care about the people who aren't interested in principles, then get out of politics. Don't get involved. Don't even get into the conversation, because you don't understand the nature of the game. You don't understand the industry that you're trying to participate in. We're not making prescriptive normative statements. We're making descriptive statements. We're describing how it works. It's like describing the functioning of a car engine or something. And then people are trying to say, oh, well, gasoline shouldn't burn. It should, whatever. Like, you're trying to say we're describing the functioning of the world. And if you want to manipulate the world, you have to start with what it is, not with what your imagination tells you that it is.
I think that and I don't know, I don't remember who left those comments, but there's, I wish maybe someone could find them, but the first few, not the long thing about Dante and everything, but when it starts getting to Machiavelli's like political philosophies, there's got to be 10 quotes that address everything that he's saying that would just really put it into context.
Yep.
And so
I don't
know,
read the Machiavellians.
You can even skip the first couple of sections, but when it gets into like Machiavelli giving sort of his it's been a minute, but just kind of outlining how power works.
Yep.
I forget what chapter it is.
The first little bit is kind of giving like a historical context to Machiavelli's positions. So it's kind of helpful to have, but it's very, very dry to get through.
Yes.
So if you get to where he's actually starting to talk about his actual philosophy, that's where the meat really is. And then if you find yourselves having questions, you could go back and listen to the historical context just to try to clarify.
Yeah, but there's like little excerpts just like from the Prince, and that just addresses a lot of this, I think.
Yeah, we're not introducing new ideas here. We're just repeating what other people have discovered themselves. One other comment he made here was, he said, you can still make rules that apply to all, and you can still have enforcement that also has to obey those laws. The rule "don't aggress" can be enforced by someone who does not aggress. Yes, and you can have a society where from each according to his need, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Like, theoretically you can have that. It just never actually happens, because you're dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with benevolent automatons. If you have a situation where the person who does the my reply to him is, who enforces the one who enforces? If you have a person or an entity that enforces, and then you expect it to enforce itself, you're just creating a recipe for corruption, because people will not naturally police themselves unless you have some sort of a mechanism for incentivizing people to police themselves. You're always going to get people who are gaming it and setting it up to where they get all of the power without all of the accountability. Better to have all of the power be explicit and consolidated in someone's sovereign. And that's what sovereignty is. What you're trying to do is you're trying to backdoor into sovereignty, and you can't, by definition. The sovereign is where the buck stops. Nobody can enforce on the sovereign. And if you're asking the sovereign to enforce on himself, you're an idiot because he's not going to. Unless he's very, very, very strongly incentivized, which is basically the only system you can get for that is a monarchy of some variant where, and you can't guarantee it. All you can do is get it as close to optimal as you can, and then hope that the guy doesn't abuse his power. And if he does, then you have to go through a war and get rid of him and whatever else. So again, you've got another engineering problem. What do you do when you get a sovereign who isn't being responsible with his power? Well, you have to have some sort of an engineering solution to that either. But the answer isn't make more people who are sovereign. That's the limited government model. The limited government model is make another person who's sovereign, make another person, another person, another person, get it all, spread it out, spread this government out among everybody. The biggest government proposition is anarchy, because anarchy says take the government and divide it up among every single person. That's the largest government that you can get with the most people involved in the decision making. That doesn't, people don't even want that. People will gladly hand off their decision making capacity. Maybe they don't realize that's what they're doing, but they're very easily manipulated into doing it. You just get someone who says, hey, you guys don't need to be worrying about all that. I'll take care of you. You just give me some of this power and I'll go fight your battles for you. This is just the natural trajectory. It'll naturally wind up back there. So when you're looking at the size of government and you say you don't want a big government, but you also say we need to decentralize and spread power out among as many people as possible, what you're saying is we need a gigantic government. That's effectively your position. That's the ANCAP position, is spread the government out among as many people as possible, and then that's when things will be best. But that just doesn't correspond with human nature at all. Let's see. I want to kind of push through a couple more of these real quick. The last thing he said, like I appreciate the interaction. I appreciate the engagement, and I hope that you can continue to engage if you want to without getting your feelings hurt. If you get your feelings hurt, sorry, that's not my intent. But I'm also just gonna say it like it is. So what he said was, he said, he quoted me. If you even start to think about mattering, that's not going to go anywhere. Basically, we were talking about the Mises Caucus is going to be the new Proud Boys. That if you start actually making a difference, actually being a threat in the political realm, you're going to get a target put on your back. And he said, I wonder why you make a podcast and grow it if your main purpose is not to matter. My purpose isn't to not matter. I want to matter in specific ways. I want to matter in specific ways that are going to be good for me and good for the people around me, but aren't going to be immediately doomed to failure.
I would like to maybe explore that just real quick, where we are already fucked, basically, is what it comes down to.
Yes.
We would already sort of put ourselves out there to a certain degree. Back in the old world, where you could say stuff, whereas these days it's not the best thing to say stuff, unfortunately. But I think that I think this particular podcast had a lot to do with figuring out different ideas and just trying to just sort of stop right before the cliff and just kind of push back and just sort of take a look around and just get like an actual idea of how we got to where we're at. Because I mean, very clearly, like some things changed, or things that had changed. They really revealed themselves to how much they had changed, and kind of the idea of what we were dealing with, that maybe we didn't have the best handle on it, kind of became clear. And it seemed like there was a division between people who recognized that at one point or another, and people who still maintain, yep, it's a state aggressing on everybody that has got us to where we're at. And so we are not in that camp. We are in the let's pull back and kind of see what the hell's going on. Let's try to understand what's going on. So I think this show is mostly about obscure philosophy that's becoming slightly less obscure, and sort of just trying to figure out where we're at, because that's like the first portion before you just start acting is figuring out where you're at, because the bottom really fucking fell out here over the past year or so. and I think like everyone kind of knew it was going to, but like hopefully there's some libertarians, and I know that there are because a lot of them reached out. We were all kind of looking for answers together, and as opposed to the impulse of what do we do, what do we do, what do we do. Well, we're all relatively broke and have like no status, so maybe that's not the question. I think the first question is what the fuck's going on, where are we, and then once you have an idea of those things, kind of understanding the problem with a little bit more nuance, then we can kind of get into anything prescriptive or anything in the way of action. But the first part is absolutely understanding what's going on.
Right. Right. Because if you don't have a good understanding of what's going on, then you're going to take stupid actions. And
right.
So first of all, you have to get an understanding of what's happening and fully understand the nature of the playing field in front of you. Then you need to start accumulating assets to act with. And once you've done that, once you have a full understanding of what's going on and you've accumulated the assets to do something about it, then you can take incisive action that actually accomplishes your goals or has a very good chance of accomplishing your goals. And that's almost a segue into the next thing I want to talk about. But just one last thing I'm going to reply. Well, one thing here, Emma says, our sovereign doesn't do much over here. Speaking of the queen. And that should tell you something. That's not your sovereign. That's not the actual sovereign. It's a pretend sovereign. Technically, she could theoretically use her sovereignty, but she's a much weaker sovereign than she used to. And really, a weak sovereign is kind of it's kind of an oxymoron. Like it's sovereigns are by definition not weak, and if they're weak, then they aren't sovereign. He says, but Model Mark here, he said again, there does not need to be a monopoly of enforcement. It's been thought out from an engineering point of view. Yes, I've already read those things. I've read the pieces of detailing how things could be set up, how things could be engineered. The problem is getting from here to there. We don't have either the technology or the human capacity for a system like that right now. If you want to get there, first of all, you need a widespread buy-in to a coherent, adaptive religion. You have to have that. You have to have everybody who's participating in the system has to be incentivized to buy in to a religion that embodies the values that you want the system to celebrate or to protect. Then you need to have the actual technology that incentivizes everyone to participate. Everyone who is already inclined to participate, you need to have the technology that facilitates their participation in such a way to ensure the best possible outcomes. There's two separate problems here. And libertarians are only focused on one. They're not focused on the prerequisite, the precursor, which is the religion. You have to have a religion that people are bound around. Or nobody, or people just don't buy in and they do their own thing. You can't have a whole bunch of conflicting value sets all in one area. You can't have a bunch of people who have different perspectives on race and sexuality and gender and politics and all the different controversial belief systems. You can't put them all in one area and then expect them to self-police. You're naturally just the attempt to eliminate tribalism is a tribal instinct. You have to embrace the tribalism and you have to let people segregate themselves according to how they want to live. Once you've done that and you've created a basis for these more limited arrangements of people, then you can start discussing within that range of people what the best way would be to engineer a solution where you guys can all live together and coexist and ensure the protection of everyone's property. And the whole like let everybody all look out for themselves just doesn't work. It doesn't work even if you have a whole bunch of people who all share the same religion. But it especially doesn't work if you have a whole bunch of people who don't share the same religion. And then it really isn't going to work because they're going to have different value sets. They're going to come into conflict, and then the strongest person is the one who's going to win, or the most devious person. So when you create that scenario, when you just try to just ram that scenario through, that's a recipe for Somalia in essence. This is why the instinct to compare, this is why people have the instinct to compare anarchy to Somalia. Because with the world we have now, that's what you'll get. We don't have the capacity to live in that world, which is the same argument the communists make about communism. They say, we don't have, humanity isn't good enough for communism. And just the same, humanity isn't good enough for anarchism because fundamentally the two are the same thing. It's the exact same proposition. It's just one group of people has an idea of how to get there and they're willing to take steps to make it happen. The other side doesn't even have an idea, have a clue how to get there.
They're just going to call you dumb.
Right. And talk to you about how oh, well, you know, our nobody has better ideas than we do or whatever. Well, sure, okay, fine, whatever. Have fun with your ideas. The people who actually know how to get things done are going to be busy communizing everything. So, and in Kapistan, you can segregate all you want as long as you don't aggress. Dude, I've read Rothbard, okay? Like, you don't need to explain Ancapistan to me. I understand Ancapistan. You got to catch up. You got to catch up. We're a number of years of thought evolution beyond you. You got to catch up to keep engaging here, or it's just not going to be worth having this conversation over and over again. So the last thing I wanted to get into was we haven't beat up on Dave Smith in a little while. And I don't want to beat up on Dave. That's not my goal. But people are commenting, talking about Dave, so I'm going to respond to what people are saying about Dave. So the first one was a comment on our last episode. This person said, I think you might be too critical of Dave Smith. He represents one avenue of approach in a multi-frontal conflict. Dave is a comedian and is fighting a culture war. Accordingly, he's selected the next largest platform after his podcast, the LP, to use as a messaging tool. Dave is on a hearts and minds mission that challenges the public affairs entities of the state. That's the battlefield he is elected to fight on. That is not the only front in this campaign. That being said, you are correct about the entire effort being discredited easily by corporate interests, but we should be supportive of friends in the field. And my response to him was just being supportive of friends when they do things that will clearly not turn out the way they're hoping is a pretty shitty way to show that you care about your friends. What I'm saying is, like, he's happy, he's welcome to do, I don't govern Dave Smith. He can do whatever he wants. But what I'm doing is I'm troubleshooting his proposed plan. And I'm shooting holes in it because if he's going to do something, he needs to do the best thing possible. And I don't think that he's doing the best thing possible. So it's to just be quiet about that and not talk about it is actually a bad way to support someone whose mission you care about. I care about his mission, and that's why. And I know Stephen feels the same way. We both care about his mission, and that's why we want to shoot holes in it, because that's what a good friend does. A good friend will troubleshoot your plan for you so that you don't do something that's going to be counterproductive. And I think good.
Yeah, when Dave came out and in sort of like he was in this mode for, I would say, a good year or so. But when he came out and said, I met a really great girl. I'm gonna get married. Any young guys out there, I would say what you do is you find a great girl, you treat her really well, get married to her, and then he's like, yep, I'm having a baby. It's the most amazing thing ever. I had a baby. Anything that any woman has ever done in the history of time, it's completely forgivable because they gave you a child, and anything that you've argued with them about, you just forget it. They're right. It doesn't matter. They're mothers, and it's the most incredible thing in the world. That message that he was giving to people who may not have been particularly inclined to it at the time, I think that did probably more good than anything that is going to be going on in the political world.
100%.
And that's, again, just because it kind of seems like a lot of people don't fully appreciate the system for what it is, and so therefore are going to be ill prepared to in anything that they do that they think is going to be combating it in any way.
Absolutely. It's not what I said here was that I'm open to the idea that we're too hard on him. Like I'm sympathetic to that, because some part of this is a performance. Like, we're trying to be provocative. We're trying to kickstart a conversation, And we also feel passionately about this subject. And I know, I don't know about Stephen, but I know that for me, when I feel passionately about something, I communicate passionately. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean I'm necessarily trying to be a dick or anything. Like I'm being blunt because I don't see any reason to beat around the bush. Like these are important conversations, and we need, might as well just have the conversation. So I'm open to that we're too hard on him, and that's why that's why I'm talking about this type of thing the way that I am, is because I want to make it clear that we're troubleshooting his approach because we care about it and we want it to be successful. If someone was getting in a car to drive down the road and I saw they had a gas leak on their car, then it's like I say, hey man, you had a gas leak on your car. You might want to do something about that. And he's like, dude, how could you say that about my car? Like, why would you say that? Or like, I guess in this case, it's someone else that's coming in. They're like, why would you be so unsupportive of your friend? Why wouldn't you just say that his car is nice? He spent a lot of money on it and he really likes it. And, the car can go fast and it's got a great sound system. And, so why would you criticize it like that? That's the kind of the dynamic that's happening here. So I fully, what I said in the comment here was that I'm open to the idea that we're too hard on Dave. I fully appreciate how busy he is, and I don't think that he's ineffective. Quite the contrary. I think he's been very effective. But now he's embarking on a path that is likely to undercut his effectiveness. And his rhetoric is demonstrating a fundamental misapprehension of the game he's jumping into. I went back to be sure. I went back and re-listened to what he was saying to make sure that I hadn't gotten it wrong. And I hadn't. I understand what he's trying to do. I understand his strategy and his philosophy. And the idea, going back to the prior conversation about hearts and minds, this is not a game for hearts and minds. This is not a changing hearts and minds game. This is not a persuasion game. That's not the situation right now. You can't persuade someone if you don't have anything to persuade them to. And right now, we may have some engineering ideas, but we don't have the ideological what would you call it? Like the ideological foundation to build them on. And the way to build that ideological foundation is not to take hold of a political party and go shout it to people. That's not the way that you persuade people to do the things that they need to do, to value the things that they need to value, to get themselves to the world that we want to live in. So another thing here another on this same subject, someone commented on the Counterflow episode of Buck Johnson that I did. And he said, it appeared to me that Matt has mistaken Dave Smith's game plan for the LP and misstated his intentions for presidential elections. By all accounts I've observed, Dave clearly wants to use the party and national election cycle to evangelize and convert the portion of the population that has not been exposed to Rothbardian libertarianism. That's exactly what I've been saying. That's my understanding, is that he's trying to use this as a changing hearts and minds tactic. He wants to go out and try to convert people to libertarianism, and he thinks the way to do that is to take over the LP and use it as a platform. He says, so continuing with his comment, furthermore, I understand Smith to be under no illusions that a presidential election victory is possible or even desirable. The whole point of running for president is to be elected president. You can have secondary causes that, like, so people have turned it into a grift where they just do it to make money. And if that's his goal, if his goal is to do it to make money, then say that. Say, my goal is to get you, I have no illusions that we're actually going to win anything. There's no way that we're ever going to get out from underneath this single party. My goal is just to make more people hear of me. Now I'm the libertarian presidential candidate. I've got a great podcast. Come listen to my podcast. Come join our movement. Like, these are the things that we value. And we're gonna create our own world. So we don't need to take over your political system to do it. Your political system is going to crash and burn. We're going to create our own world where we can protect our own interests and take care of ourselves and our families. If you that's a type of message that can resonate with people. But the message of your political system sucks, so what we're going to try to do is take over your political system so that we can communicate to you that your political system sucks. Well, if the political system sucks, you wouldn't have any reason to take it over. You wouldn't have any need to. One thing he said was, we need to take over the third largest political party so we can tell people that they don't need political parties in their lives. If they don't need political parties in their lives, you shouldn't need to take over the third largest political party to communicate that idea to them. The fact that you are undercuts your message. The fact that you think that you need to take over a political party in order to sell your message reveals that your message requires political parties. That's the message that you're selling. It's a performative contradiction. So if you're going to take over the political party to tell people they don't need political parties, you're doomed to fail. That's not a message that's going to sell. And if your message doesn't sell, that's on you. That's not on the people who aren't buying it. You're responsible for crafting your product for other people to buy. If they're not buying it, you have to either change the product or change the way you're selling it. The problem, again, I'll say this again. Libertarianism is not unpopular because people haven't heard of libertarianism. Libertarianism is unpopular because people have heard of libertarianism. And the solution to that is not to tell more people about libertarianism. If your goal is to change hearts and minds, you're not going to do that through the LP. That's not the means to which, or let me put it this way. That's the least effective way that you could do it. You're definitely going to change some people's hearts and minds, because I know that invariably I'm going to get someone, well, I came in through the LP. If it wasn't for Gary Johnson, I wouldn't be here. Okay, well, whatever, fine. Again, there's trade-offs. You've got opportunity costs. His efforts can be much better served doing something other than trying to take over the LP, if his goal in taking over the LP is to use it as an evangelistic platform, because it's just about the worst evangelistic platform that he could use. And the hurdles and all the bullshit and stuff that everyone's going to have to go through, you're just going to get bogged down in a bunch of irrelevant shit that would only be worth going through if you were actually trying to change things tangibly. So that's why the local levels, that's a pretty good way to do. That's a good way to go about it. Get involved at the local levels, because there you can actually change some things. There you can ease lockdowns, or you can change drug policies, or you know, there's all kinds of different things that you can do at the local level, especially if you're a sheriff. If we could get every sheriff in America to be a libertarian, that would make a huge difference. That's where you can, those are the things that are worth going through the political avenue. But if your goal is evangelism, you're not gonna do that through politics. That's the realm of business and education and entertainment. Those are the areas. And then you don't evangelize the idea of how evil the Fed is. You mean, you could talk about that, like whatever, but like that's not the game changer. That's not the thing that gets people's attention and changes their perspective. What we have to be doing is selling a vision of a better future. We have to describe what that future looks like, not just describe how bad this one is. And that future has to be attainable. It can't be utopian and unrealistic. It has to appeal to stuff that has already proven successful. If you say, I know this hasn't been tried before, but here's how it could work. People are like, okay, well, come back to me when you've got it working. That's the natural, this is like you're trying to sell a product. You're trying to, it's like a Kickstarter or something where you're like, well, nobody's ever made this product before, and we don't really know, exactly how it would work, but, we know that all the other products don't do this thing, so we're gonna, it's just like, okay, well, let me know as soon as you've got all the money raised for it, and then I'll come buy the product once it exists. But I'm not going to invest my money in something that who knows if it'll ever even work. This is just the whole message is completely flawed. So let me continue reading this comment here. He said, I keep observing this disconnect where strategic dissidents of the Smith plan assume that Ancapistan through elections is the plan. I definitely don't assume that that's his goal, because he explicitly said, our goal is to take over the party, but we're not going to do it to try to accomplish anything. We're just trying to take over the party. The plan, as I understand it, is to convert enough of the population to achieve critical mass that will force an untenable situation for the current status quo, thus producing a cascade of decentralization, secession, and perhaps political migration to provide a higher level of individual liberty and importance to the U.S. If your goal is to convert enough of the population to achieve critical mass that will force an untenable situation for the current status quo, who gives a shit what your message is? Your message just has to be anything that makes the status quo uncomfortable. If you're just going in there to just create chaos, then who cares what your messaging is? Who cares what you talk about? Just do whatever, appeal in whatever populist way you can to expose and undermine the cathedral. and do it in the most effective avenue possible. Because your goal is just to raise hell. Your goal is just to just like get people completely not buying in anymore and just whatever. Just, if that's your goal, your messaging doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be ideologically consistent or anything. You just have to tell people something that's going to get them to stop buying in the system. So
which is why during all the Boater Squad stuff,
yes,
there was a huge opportunity for that.
Yes.
But they seemed allergic to it. A lot of libertarians.
Yes. And if people are having their lives harmed by immigration, talk to them about how bad having forced immigration is. And like just meet people wherever they are and give them whatever message will undermine their confidence in the system. It doesn't need to be ANCAP approved. It just has to undermine their confidence in the system, if that's what your goal is. Did you have something else? I thought I interrupted you.
No.
Okay. So just to be clear, I linked the spot where Dave specifically, and when Dave was talking to Eric Brakey in the Lions of Liberty, the debate that they did about using the GOP versus the LP, there's a specific spot where Dave poo-poos using local elections. And then he says explicitly, the goal is to focus on the presidential ticket and to use it as a bully pulpit. Like that's his goal. His goal is, okay, yeah, whatever. You can do whatever with state legislators, but that's not where you really change the game. The real name of the game is to focus on the presidential ticket and then use it as a bully pulpit to change hearts and minds through evangelizing them or whatever. Like that's the part right there that is what I'm saying that he's doing. That's the part where I understand what he's trying to accomplish because he said it in his own words. And I just said, you're never going to convert enough of the population to achieve critical mass. That's the point. The libertarian message you're trying to sell in order to convert people is DOA politically. This isn't a persuasion problem, it's an engineering problem. So I'll put the link to that timestamp spot in the show notes of the episode today on YouTube, just so that you guys can watch that part if you want. But there was one other thing that someone said about Dave Smith in one of the comments on ours that I was just going to lump in with this response. Let me see if I can find it.
To kill time, I'll just say that we've got somebody watching who wanted to know if Matt was gluten free, and I would say no. But you want to just talk about gluten free? Let's look at this sexy boy. Oh, we got so much glare. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm trying to see it. Pull it back from a little bit and tilt it down.
Oh, we gotta tilt it up. Tilt
it sideways.
Tilt to the side.
Other way.
It's not happening. Oh my gosh. Find that damn thing. And
now it's out of focus. What is it?
Yeah, man, it's the guy who was who asked the question. And I wanted to try to blow him up, but like.
Oh, yeah. I see him now.
Oh yeah, there we go. What about that deliciousness right there? He's a delicious boy, and I know that a lot of our live audience is going to want to see a delicious boy. Yeah. Shout out to Emma. I don't want to presume anything. That should have been enough time for you to find whatever you're looking for. But
well, I was sitting here looking at the screen.
I know.
I think that. I think I probably already answered the last thing that I wanted to get into, because I don't see anything else here. I think I already answered that, talking about comparing Ron Paul and his principle and what he accomplished. Yep, I think that's probably about all that I had for today. Do you have anything else that you're particularly thinking about?
No, I'm gonna go teach dance. But in the spirit of teaching dance, this is just for like an audience question. Is it smart if I were to just at one point say, at some point I am just going to not enforce mask mandates? Is that smart? Is that stupid? If someone asked me that question, I would say it was dumb.
For what again?
Like, I'm thinking of making some kind of announcement where, like, at a certain month, I just kind of put it out there coyly that I'm not going to be insisting that anyone covers their mouth for an hour of dancing. Now there are legal consequences, you know, if people decide to participate in snitch culture, which many people are inclined to do. It could bring me problems. And like if I was talking about just simply complying with a regime because they're the regime, then you know I probably wouldn't go that route. But I'm just interested what would be the opinion of the audience about what a small business owner should do who taught in a situation where, you know, you're kind of tend to be breathing a lot. You know, it's physical activity, and I just don't want to enforce them. I don't want to enforce mask mandates. You know, allegedly, off the record. This is all hypothetical. This is a bit.
Yeah, I won't tell anybody.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I've got a space, and I guess like it would just be sort of it would just the trick would be to evaluate, you know, what the risk reward would be. But if I had a little corner of the universe that I could make not, you know, a living hell for people, and it wasn't going to come back on me too hard, I'm wondering if that's my responsibility or if I just have to totally play by the rules. So
I would say
leave
that
it in the comments below, fans.
I'll give my take. I think that you should do it to the extent that it doesn't cost you too much. And that sounds like a little bit of it sounds kind of like a cop out answer, but you know, situations are going to depend. And you know, maybe you don't advertise that it's mask free, but the people who are already coming, and you can like word of mouth, people can say, oh yeah, here's where I go and it's mask free and whatever. And so just be strategic about it. As an example, there's this video going around of this lady that is elderly lady in Texas who's from Oregon. She was RVing around the country and she wanted to go in and get her money out of the bank. And this was a couple days, I think, after Texas lifted the mask mandate for the state. But this bank had a mask mandate for within its premises. And she refused to put a mask on, so they called a cop, and the cop came, and he ended up having to like take her to the ground and arrest her and haul her out and everything. And I said, you can follow me on Twitter, Matt, or you can follow me at Real King Pilled. And I said, like, I'm probably an unpopular opinion, but this lady's an idiot. Like, that's not a hill to die on. Martyrdom does nobody any good. All you're doing is you're just attracting, like, it's a completely unwinnable fight. You're never going to win that. That's why I'm like, I need to go get groceries, and everyone loses their mind if your nose pops out of your mask around here. Whatever. I'm going to wear the mask. It's a pain in the ass, and I think it's stupid, but it's not worth my time to go fight it because I'm not going to win a moral victory. And even if I was to win a moral victory, it's not going to do anything for me. It's not going to advance my own cause. If you're going to pop your head up out of the masses and risk getting lopped off, then it better be worthwhile. It better not be just, hey, I bought myself 30 minutes in a grocery store without a mask on, because that's not the risk reward on that decision. Just it's just not there. And it's crazy that we're having to have this conversation. Things happen fast. Imagine even a year ago, imagine having this conversation, saying that in a year you're going to have this conversation about, you know, whether I should reopen, not have masks and all that. People have been like, in America, you know, especially 2 years ago. But like what John said, he said, do what you want, but do enough to stay out of trouble. And I think that's exactly the what I would recommend. I know that doesn't help.
Nah, that's it's kind of funny just knowing I teach in a couple different like areas of the state, and there's different. It's just kind of funny to see how different groups treat the situation differently. And you know, there's one group that is pretty militant about it. So
yeah.
I
want to give one last response to Model Mark here. He said that he says, I do need to explain this stuff because you mischaracterize Ancapistan. Read Rothbard again. And then he said, there was one other part here. He said, oh God, there's so many comments. This has been easily the most active comment section that we've had so far. He said, I have limited time, and from what I've heard, he does not understand Rothbard. Also, his emphasis on every word is very tiring. I don't understand what that means. Would you rather me just ignore some of the things that you say? Or I don't understand what's wrong with me emphasizing every word. Um, this is a common libertarian trope. You read the things I did, and you have a different opinion, therefore you didn't understand it. No, I fully understood it. I fully understood it and I believed it wholeheartedly. I was in exactly your position a year ago, 2 years ago. I was in exactly your position. Just like before, a year or two before that, I was in a different position. And a year or two before that, I was in a different position. As I encounter new information, I incorporate it and I update my ideological operating system. And what too many libertarians, especially prominent ones, it's very obvious that they haven't updated their political ideological operating system in a long time. They have this idea that like they read up to a certain point and then they hit a point and they thought, there we go. They set that book down, closed that book, set it down and said, I solved it all. Now it's just a matter of persuading everyone else that I solved it all. And the fact of the matter is you didn't solve it all. Sorry, the reason why I'm not engaging with your idealistic perception of Ancapistan is because it's an idealistic perception of Ancapistan. In order to get to that point, many things need to change. You don't need to persuade me that your vision of Ancapistan would be great. I think that would be fantastic. I'd love to live in a world like that. Now, let's create it. How do we do that? Well, if your thing is, we just have to convince enough people to like it, you're going to lose. You're just never going to win that game. You cannot create Ancapistan through democratic means. You're not going to persuade 51% of the population to embrace Ancapistan. You're not even going to convince 10% of the population. Maybe 5%. But you're thinking of the numbers game in the wrong way. You don't need to convince people to want to live in that world. You need to create that world. And then when it's successful, when it thrives, other people will just want to join it naturally. So then the conversation you need to have is, what would enable a society like that to thrive? What is standing in the way of it? Of us instituting that sort of a society? What's preventing us from doing that? And what dynamics, what realities would we need to institute a society like that and then have it sustain itself? And once you start considering all of that, you realize that a society like that basically is never going to sustain itself. It just doesn't adapt itself to human nature, at least not without a tremendous amount of technology that we don't have. So you either need to be in the business of building the technology, or you need to be in the business of converting the people to something that will work with what we have now. And that's not Ancapistan. The people we have now will not adapt themselves to Ancapistan. So you can find the ones who would, or at least are open to it, and just try to create your own little community. You don't need to go try to convert, the whole world population. Just start building your own. And if it works, if you get the engineering right, if it suits the ends of wealthy, powerful people, they'll come join you and they'll fund your project. And things will expand from there. That's the way this sort of thing happens. This doesn't happen by you winning the third largest party nomination and going out and just trying to convince everybody that Murray Rothbard had all the answers. It's just you can do it if you want, but I'm telling you right now, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time and a waste of resources to take that approach via a political party. But that is we've gone over 2 hours at this point. This is the longest episode we've ever done. So start with the trailer park and cap park boys. That's fun.
This is something, because I know that it's the fundraising seems to be the big thing that the Mises Caucus is pushing. Is there like a platform for like what the plan is? With the money. I'm just curious. Like maybe I don't know. Maybe we can look at it for next time.
Did you
But
see?
like,
Did you see Sarwark's tweet about Michael Heiss?
no,
Oh, he was taking shots at Michael Heiss basically for taking a salary or for being paid by the Mises Caucus. He basically
as
was
opposed
like, he was
as
like,
opposed to
you're
by the CIA.
right,
Just kidding.
right.
Yeah.
He's like the I can't remember. He did it in his shitty, smarmy little Sarwark way.
Yeah.
But he said basically he was like, what is your organization in the business of apart from raising money to pay the leader of the party or something like that. And I was like, this little fucking asshole. He's such a snake. He's such a scummy, disgusting snake. I despise the guy. He is the epitome of what you were talking about before. The smarmy, progressive, just slimy little serpent that just makes your skin crawl when you're around him because he's such a swamp rat. Anyways, we're not contributing anything positive anymore. So,
Decent question.
yeah, this has been fun, guys. Oh, this has been another episode of King Pilled. I'm Matt. You can follow me at RookKingPilled on Twitter. You can follow Steven, Liberal Steve, at Messina Inc. on Twitter. Please like this show, share it, subscribe to whatever. Go follow anything King Pilled related. Just go follow it and spread it and share it around. And we will be back here again on Thursday at something like 12:30 Pacific. See ya.